Anybody else? It's Twix.
Love Twix.
Okay, you want a Snickers? We've got Snickers too. I'm a little bit of a candy tramp. So if you behave well, there's candy in it for you. I have Twix and Snickers.
Man.
And if you have peanut allergies in your bag, he's going to give you the Snickers.
That's okay, I'm going to have a pen, so we can use that if somebody doesn't want to do
It's a discipline thing.
Nothing like a little anaphylactic shock early in the morning.
that. We have a nurse in the room.
I would like to present Crossroads Storytelling Club.
Yay!
Obviously, they need no help in introductions. They've already started.
We're going to introduce each other. This is my tag team partner, Meg Schneider. Meg is an award-winning writer and public speaker, past District 19 humorous speech champion, and author of 12 books.
It's not as impressive as it sounds.
13 would be impressive.
See, it's anybody can write 12 books. It's that 13th one that really gets us.
As you can tell, she's been telling stories ever since she learned how to talk, and the challenge now is to get her not to. Meg Schneider.
This morning is Kory May, who is a member of Affirmationists, Sunrise Marian, sort of, Quad Cities Advanced, and Crossroads Storytellers, all over in the eastern part of the state. He likes baking, eating just enough, and thinks ice cream is an underrepresented food group. I'm with him on that one. When he's not reading or writing, he competes in Toastmaster speech contests with some practice. He might turn out all right. So. Kory May. And if you could, because we're going to have a lot of time, not a lot of time, but a lot of fun, would you silence your cell phones, please, if you haven't already done so?
All right. I'm just setting up my Toastmaster app for the moment. This is my timer app on my tablet. I do like the color purple. Here is my timer app. I heard that. If you're in here about stories and storytelling, you've come to the right place.
If not, it's time to leave.
Go now before I hand out more candy. Everyone has a story to tell.
I do. I have a story.
Stories happen to people who can tell them.
I can tell a story. I have a story to tell.
We joined Toastmasters to communicate those stories.
I can communicate a story. Let me communicate. You want me to tell you a story?
Yeah.
Let me tell you a story.
Do you want to hear her story?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you sure you want to hear her story? All right. Now I have to play Sergeant at Arms, and I got to move this
Thing.
thing. It's not a podium, it's a lectern. One moment.
Don't run over people.
I'll
You're
try
not
not
kidding. Are you trying to
to.
fish us out over here or what?
How many of you watched Big Bang Theory? Have you seen the episode where Sheldon goes rock climbing, looks down, and faints in the harness?
Oh, yeah.
I can relate to that. Not because I'm a genius. Well, almost, but
One story short.
that was a really good line. But because, like Sheldon, I have a fear of falling. Not a fear of heights, which is an irrational phobia. Fear of falling, on the other hand, is a perfectly rational instinct of self-preservation. So you may be surprised to learn that I actually went skydiving. Which, when you come right down to it, is nothing more than intentional falling. ISU Skydiving Club was raising money by taking Cabbage Patch Kids up on jumps with them. It was the 80s. They invited a photographer from the college newspaper to go on one of these jumps with them and take pictures. The photographer's wife said, no. So the skydiving club said, well, Meg, why don't you go? And I said, sure. It was to be a tandem jump, which means that I was going to be harnessed to a jump master. And the jump master was in charge of everything. He would spot the jump. He would make the jump. He would pay attention to the altimeter and open the parachute at the right time and steer us back to Earth without causing any injuries to us or surrounding fauna. My job was to be petrified, and I was really good at it. We practiced on the ground, and I put on my little jumpsuit, and the harness, and he told me that we would step out onto this small step outside the door. We'd hold on to the strut underneath. When he said arms, I was to grab my harness like this. When he said legs, I was to raise my feet. Then he would say, 1, 2, 3, jump, and he would make the jump. And I would just be along for the ride. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? So we got into this twin-engine Cessna, and on our ascent, the pilot, who I really think had a sick, twisted sense of humor, played Prince's Let's Go Crazy. On our way up to 6,500 feet. And I was nervous, but I wasn't terrified yet. I'm not afraid of flying. However, when the pilot opened the door to the plane, and the jump master and I came up to climb out onto this teeny tiny little, I swear it was this big, this step. I looked down, I saw what 6,500 feet of nothing looks like, and I thought, there is no way I am getting out of this plane. There is just no flipping way. I forgot I was harnessed to someone who was. We climbed out onto this little step, and I'm trying very hard to breathe. We grab onto the strut underneath the wing, and the wind is coming at us at 90 miles an hour, and I really can't breathe, even if I wanted to. The jump master said arms. I grabbed my harness. He said legs. I raised my legs. He never said 1, 2, 3, jump. Next thing I know, we are falling with our backs to the ground. The plane is taken off for who knows where. All I see is blue sky above me, and I'm thinking, this is wrong. We're going to die. Apparently, I accepted my fate and did a Sheldon. Because the jump master was able to turn us over, and I watched as this clear blue sky rolled into the horizon and then the green fields below. Great. Now I can see what we're going to hit. But actually, it doesn't matter, because I have not taken a breath in 2.5 minutes. And I am going to pass out long before we hit the ground. And for some reason, at the time, I thought it was really important that I be conscious when I died. So I thought maybe if I turned my head to the side, I could catch some air in the corner of my mouth. And just as I did that, the wind went away as if someone had flipped a switch. And I thought, great, now what? But a moment later, I felt the jerk of the parachute, which took us back up about 500 feet that we had already fallen. And from then on, This was an incredible trip. It was so still and so peaceful until I started kicking my legs and yelling. I scared some birds, I think. It took us about 10 minutes to glide back to Earth, and it was amazing. I felt a sense of freedom that I had never experienced before, and by the way, will never experience again. That was almost 30 years ago. I am still rationally afraid of falling. But I have learned that I can face that fear and get beyond it. And anything that scares me now, I compare to jumping out of a plane. If I did that, I can do this. All of you are scared of something. Maybe giving a speech, telling a story, worried about how well you'll tell a story. We're going to give you tools today to improve your storytelling skills. And you'll get past that fear. And getting past that fear will give you the courage and the confidence to do anything else you want to do. Kory, would you like to join me?
Why, yes. I get to be Jamie Ward for a moment.
Everybody wants to be Jamie.
Everybody wants to.
You don't have the hair.
In the next 43 minutes or so, we will cover the history and science of storytelling. We will talk about story construction and structure. After that, we'll discuss the value of a well-told story. Then we'll hit on the power of a story and issue a final cautionary tale. Accept some questions, and put a bow on it and wrap it up for Christmas.
Or Festivus, for those of you who don't celebrate Christmas.
There we go.
Do we have to listen to the history?
Well, we're going to make it fun, because it's all about storytelling, right? And stories are fun.
What she said.
Let's talk about why we tell stories. Why do we tell stories?
It's fun.
It's fun. That doesn't count as an answer because I gave you that answer. Yes.
Why, after your kids spend their childhood embarrassing you, you get to do the same to them.
See? Revenge. Revenge is a great reason to tell your story.
I think that one qualifies as oral history.
Yes.
It's a way to connect with other people.
Oh,
Intimacy.
Martha, would you like Snickers or Twix?
No, you'll just hit me in the head. Never mind. Catch me later.
The truth is that we are hardwired for stories. And we have been since the dawn of time. Our earliest ancestors.
Too grunt, the Neanderthal. Out and about. Lightning struck a tree and fire appeared. Too grunt couldn't explain this phenomenon, so he created a story. That's what this is all about. And ever since then, we've passed stories down as oral tradition. Europeans were the ones that really created written history. But if you look in Africa, everything is told generation to generation orally. A strong oral tradition. We do that too, as we were alluded to, prom stories. Everybody has them. You meet your future daughter-in-law or future son-in-law, and you tell the story about how your child shoved a bean up their nose. Everybody does. Well, maybe I was the only one that had a bean shoved up his nose. I hope you can sympathize with me. When we tell stories from person to person, we engage their brain. Were you up in the plane with Meg? Could you feel her terror? Being on that tiny little strut and waiting for 1, 2, 3, and all of a sudden, airborne. That is because in her descriptions, she connected with your brain. You've seen kids do this. That's what a speaker does. Telling a story, it engages your brain.
But it engages the sensory and motor cortexes, not just the language processing centers. That's what makes a good story. It engages you emotionally, not just intellectually.
That's the reason why PowerPoint is not necessarily the most effective use of data. There was a speaker that I know quite closely who used to do data dumps. Long oral histories about interesting, possibly, potentially, interesting subjects and make them dull and dry.
So here's the difference between the data dump and a story. A story is a man walks into a bar and something happens. A data dump is a man walks into a bar graph, gets bored, and starts playing Candy Crush Saga on his smartphone. That's the difference.
There's nothing wrong with playing Candy Crush. It's the whole idea that our brain shuts off with too much data. There are two processing points for that. It's Broca's area and Wernicke's area. And those two light up with data. But there's only so much data our brain can take. And then we shut off. And then you start to see this from your audience members. Because you've lost the audience. A story, on the other hand, connects with the cortex, the sensory cortex, and if you're using metaphors, all of a sudden, the same part of your brain from experience is lit up in your audience. And you have a connection. Okay?
Here's a test. Finish this sentence. Come and listen to my story about a man named Jed.
Well, now we don't have to say.
How many of you know where your keys are? Did you see the delay? Do I know where my keys are? These are the different areas of your brain. And my brain obviously has its priorities screwed up because it thinks that I need to be able to recite the lyrics to the Beverly Hillbillies theme song immediately, but does not think it's important for me to know where my keys are. Your brain works pretty much the same way, and believe me, as you get older, it's going to work more that way.
When we use hackneyed phrases, filler words, cliches that we as Toastmasters are loath to admit that we use, our audience's brains shut off. If I say it was a rough day, we've heard that 1,000 times. But if we talk about the smoothness of Meg's skin, that was kind of creepy. I'm
standing right here!
sorry. And this is on video too.
I know. Blackmail. I'm going to go get water. You're on your own.
When we talk about sensations, again, we are connecting with people because you have a similar experience. Every time we tell a story or use metaphors, especially when we use metaphors, you are trying to create a parallel in your experience to match my experience and to bring me close to you or bring your experiences close to mine. And it gets better. Simply by telling a story, we can plant ideas, thoughts, and emotions into our listeners' brains. There's tremendous power in storytelling. What else did you feel when you heard Meg's story?
felt a kinship to her because I'd be in that same place. No, I'm not gonna get jump out of this airplane.
Emotion. Anyone else? Snickers or Twix?
Snickers.
There's a vacillation of emotion from fear to humor.
Okay. Snickers or Twix?
Okay.
Oh, you can't lie.
Interesting thing about humor. Humor shuts off the analytical portion of your brain. Did you know that? When you laugh, you can't think rationally. Which is why crazy people laugh like that.
I'm not crazy, I'm just a little touched.
Penn and Teller, the one that doesn't talk,
That would be Penn.
that would be Teller.
You're right. That's Penn.
That is Penn. He's from our club, and he's competing later today, so please show him a lot of support. Listen to my story about a man named the Teller did an article for Smithsonian,
Yes, Smithsonian.
and he talked about the magician's art of misdirection, which is not so much that as tricking the brain to pay attention to the wrong thing. Misdirection is an oversimplification of that. And what he has learned in his years of performing is that if he can do something to get the audience to laugh, even if he does a telltale movement that would show you how the trick is accomplished, right after that, the audience will miss it completely. Getting you to laugh puts you in a completely emotional state and shuts down your intellectual state, if only for a second.
And you are susceptible to suggestion.
Candy works that way too, so watch him.
Why am I the straight man in it? Well, when
I think you just answered your own question.
Would you like to clarify that?
You want a Snickers or Twix?
getting Snickers from the audience, I guess it's Twix. Oh, come on now, it was fair.
Show him the love, come on. Show him the love.
Let's move a little forward. Boy, oh boy. Personal stories, if you don't think that stories make a difference, Jeremy Sue, and I have the link for this, said that personal stories and gossip make up 65% of our conversation. 65. So all you folks who say you don't gossip, liars! The point is, we have to make sense of something. We have to make sense of everything, so we tell stories. You tell our personal stories, oh yeah, traffic was horrible, I almost got sideswiped, that's a story. And can you believe she's wearing that after Labor Day? Gossip. And don't tell me it doesn't happen. Because we do it. We're hardwired to tell stories. Simple language with low complexity. Again, there's a speaker that I used to know who was dense on prose, very, very dense on prose, extremely complex ideas, and he'd lose an audience very, very quickly. And then he learned that perhaps he should use simpler sentences and simpler concepts and became a much more effective speaker. Please bear this in mind. Simple language carries much more weight and allows you to connect with your audience much earlier, much faster, and much more effectively than complexity. I see Meg coming up. She's going to make a point.
Are any of you familiar with Hemingway's 6-word story?
Yes.
Wait, candy, Snickers, or Twix?
Oh, Snickers.
Oh,
For sale. This is the story. As soon as he gets done trying out.
You're going to have a whole bag.
6-word story. For sale, baby shoes, never worn.
What did you feel in those 6 words?
A bargain.
So you don't have any emotional side of your brain. Okay.
Thank you, left brain.
And does it matter that we don't know the circumstances? When you're writing your speeches and you're telling a story, details are important, but they are not all important. That story resonates with almost everybody except this gentleman over here. Because you can attach your own experience to it.
And in those 6 words, again, your personal experience. You may not know someone who suffered that loss. You may not have suffered the loss personally, but you may know someone. And in those 6 words, tremendous power has been conveyed, and you feel emotion. Here's another one. We were speaking briefly about data dumps with no emotional attachment. I'm going to see if you recognize this. Cradle lodged up in tree, blowing wind initiates cradle movement, supporting branch breaks, cradle and occupant descend rapidly, extent of infant injury unknown.
That's how Rockabye Baby would look on a PowerPoint. Those are the bullet points, right? Did you feel anything? No, you're just like,
I don't sound like that.
no, but people who use PowerPoints and bullets. Here's why they call them bullet points. Have you ever thought about this? Bullets are deadly. Bullet points are deadly dull. Sometimes you can't avoid them, but use them sparingly, please. If you want to add impact, use PowerPoint or a similar program to convey images, sound, movement. That's how you add impact with a visual aid, not by listing bullet points on a screen.
Yes, that is crutch. Jeffrey Gitomer, among other people, has told this: tell a story, make a point. Or make a point, tell a story. So as you are emphasizing it, back it up with a story. The point is A, have a supporting story. The point is B, supporting story. Or supporting story, and then your point. That way, you have substantiated it in a way that works. You can tell a statistic, and then you can tell a humanized story. People don't care about statistics. People care about the human impact of statistics.
We don't relate to data, we relate to people. So if you have to convey data, find a way to put a face on it.
Meg talked briefly about Penn and Teller. The quote is, and I want to make this point a little bit stronger. A little discovery that I think maybe Penn and I made, but I'm sure magicians have discovered over the centuries, is that laughter disables your ability to think critically, at least for a moment. So if I do some move that might be slightly suspect to the audience, and immediately afterward there's a laugh, I can be pretty sure they're going to forget any attention they were going to give that move, even and especially if it comes afterward. If you follow a comedian or a storyteller, Meg, comedian and storyteller, you see how she told the story, set you up, impact, pause, punchline. Her message is in that punchline or soon thereafter, and we were more open to that. There was also some willing suspension of disbelief, insofar as that's a literary term from Samuel Taylor Coleridge. I'm going old school. I'm certain my high school English teacher would be very proud of me. But our brain wants us to believe. Do any of you recall Superman with Christopher Reeve back in 1980?
Yes.
You will believe a man can fly. We knew he couldn't fly, but for the purposes of that movie, we did. And that Superman persona suffused his entire career, so even after his accident, we believed that he could overcome. And there was a hubbub when there was a computer-generated commercial that showed him walking. People were like, no, you can't do that because you're giving too much false hope. But that was the point. We wanted to believe. Our brains want to make sense of the world.
Which is why people think that pro wrestling is real. There are stories, no, seriously, there are stories, right? It's like a soap opera in a wrestling ring. And don't even ask me how I know this. Because I'm not proud of it. But
Tune in Monday nights, brother!
that's why it works. That's why it draws in the audience, because there are storylines. And you have heroes and villains.
Faces and heels. Well, that's a wrestling term, I'm sorry.
Oh. Structure of the story is actually very simple. I'm going to give you a very easy to remember way to structure your stories. You can play with this however you want, but if you get stuck, this is a good blueprint to follow. 7 sentences, 7 phrases. Once upon a time. Once upon a time, there was a college student who was afraid of heights. Correction, she was afraid of falling from heights. And every day, she would do, this is the second phrase, and every day. Every day, she would do everything she could to avoid situations where she might fall from a height.
Until one day,
somebody asked her if she would go skydiving.
and because of this,
And because of this, she experienced
palpitations.
I was looking for something a little bit stronger. Petrification, terrified. Anyway, a lot of stuff.
Depends.
It was the 80s, they didn't have them. And because of that, she got to experience 10 of the most amazing minutes of her life. Until finally, this is 6, until finally, she landed safely on the ground and realized that she had faced her fear and not beat it, because that's not necessary, but she had not let it stop her. And ever since that day, anytime anything scares her, she tells herself, I jumped out of a plane, I can do this.
7 steps.
Does that make sense to everybody?
We can repeat that one more time. One more time.
Once upon a time.
And every day.
Once upon a time establishes the setting and characters, and every day establishes what life is like in that world. Until one day, something changes. There's an incident that causes conflict.
And because of this?
And because of the conflict, this happened. And because this happened, something else happened. And you can add as many something else happens as you want. Think any book by James Michener. You know, just on and on. War and Peace. Although that's really not fair, because nothing happens until page 387.
And that was
Until finally, and that's the climax of your story. And then,
And ever since that day.
ever since that day tells you how that world that you created has changed. How the character has changed, what circumstances are different. It's the moral of the story. It's the message of your story. It can be the call to action for your story.
There are 4 points of storytelling. And these will match up with the 7 sentences. Message. What do you want to say? Plot. How you're going to say it. Conflict. Means by which stuff happens. And characters. The people upon whom your actions are being done. Dwayne Corp isn't in here. My grammarian report is safe. What's very important for any storytelling is, again, your message. And you want to have a simple, clear message. If you can have a, as Crossroads would talk about, a thesis statement, 10 words or less, it is direct, and you can get your message across to your audience. Plot. What's happening? Conflict. Again, that would be your...
Until one day, the inciting incident is called in literary circles, but they're snobs, so we don't have to call it that. Until one day, something happened. They called and said, will you jump out of a plane for us, please? Sure, sure.
And that's what we call a character. We have a character right here. And she became every person who has a fear of heights.
Falling.
Okay, sorry. I don't have a fear of heights. I'm taller.
Because you are falling.
Yeah.
Do we have, I'm looking at time.
Yeah, we've got plenty of time.
What time are we supposed to wrap up?
Shouldn't the fear be a sudden stop?
It could be. It could be. The fear is the sudden stop.
It's the consequences of falling. You're absolutely right. We want to make sure we have enough time to answer any questions or have any discussion that you want to have. So that's why he's looking through his notes to see if there's anything else we feel like we need to tell you to have you take away. In the meantime, yes, ma'am.
I'm dying to know, did you remember to take pictures?
I barely remembered to close my eyes. No, I did not take pictures.
Oh, you didn't?
The photographer stayed safely on the ground and took pictures of me getting ready for the
I
jump.
thought you were to take pictures as you went down.
No, they wanted me to describe the experience, which assumed that I would survive the experience, and I found that actually very, heartening. They didn't think I was going to die.
We talked about, at the very beginning, one of the points we were going to go to was the power of storytelling.
Oh, right.
Why are we putty in the storyteller's hands? And when we enter fictional worlds or stories, our brain capacity is changed, and we are able to process information differently. The more absorbed you are in a story, the more you are unable to critically assess information, which leads us to the X-File moments and conspiracy theories. From the idea that all the conspiracies surrounding JFK's assassination, and there's no political bent to this, there's absolutely none, because I'm going to touch on all kinds of conspiracies really briefly. Previously, long before we were around that the earth was flat, there was the conspiracy of JFK's assassination. Did we really go to the moon?
Area 51.
Yeah, Area 51.
Oh, that's an excellent one, yeah.
Fantastic one. Now, these may very well be true, but when we see things like the National Enquirer, they throw those things out there, and we want to make sense of these inexplicable things. Was 9/11 allowed to happen? Is our current president an anti-American, non-U.S. born Kenyan socialist, hating American? Okay. For someone, those are realities. And there is a connection in someone's brain that says all these things are true. And that's the power of a story. It doesn't necessarily have to be true, but it has to be, but someone is able to believe it because they are willing to suspend their disbelief. This is where the cautionary tale comes. Do you remember the Trojan horse? That's what a story is. It is a vehicle. We give someone a gift, and once we've broken down the defenses, we can implant our enemy.
It's brainwashing.
It
This
can
is
be.
really cool stuff.
It can be. It's a delivery system for the speaker's agenda. There's often a phrase that comes out, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. Be mindful, there's a good deal of responsibility for every speaker to give that and pay attention to that, and at the same time, don't betray your audience's trust.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Spider-Man! Amazing fantasy.
I believe he can climb up the side of the building.
It was Spider-Man Tumble who told you to do
Comic fanboy stuff. Thank you. What else you got?
That's all I have.
Oh, wait.
Oh, he has more.
Quickly, just so you know, there isn't a storytelling gene. There is no storytelling gene. And your ability to tell a good story can be nurtured, you can cultivate it, you can learn it. The more you practice it, the better you're going to be at it. And the better your story is going to be, the better your story will appear as though it is strictly spontaneous. Mark Twain made the comment, it takes 2 weeks to create a good one-liner. I'm paraphrasing. And the idea would be that as you're thinking about good one-liners, as you're thinking about a good story, the more you work at it, the better it's going to be when you actually deploy it.
Hey Kory, I have a little tidbit. I learned a lesson about storytelling, what you just said, nurture, that I'll never forget. In college, we had a January term, and I took storytelling. And I'm a good writer. I got my story back. I got a C minus. And why do you think I got a C minus?
Did you have a man walking into a bar back?
I had no conflict.
No comment?
Because I'm a pacifist, I just don't like conflict. And I realized that you can't tell a good story. So I'll never forget that sometimes we have to go out of our comfort zone to tell a good story.
Conflict is the
Snickers
hook.
or Twix?
Yeah, either one.
Holy cow, your name is way off, Dave.
Candy makes the whole world go round. If we can ask now to take questions, we'll wrap it up one more time with our conclusions. Cindy?
How do you find that balance between enough detail and too much detail that you lose your audience?
Simplicity?
That's a really good question, and it's kind of a matter of feel. If you only have 5 to 7 minutes to tell a story, you want to leave out all the unimportant stuff. And then you want to eliminate what's important, but not what's most important. And it's a matter of practice. Jamie, you have something to add?
Let me add to this. There's a story that starts out, when I was young, my mom and I walked out to the car and we saw the neighbor was crying. And then I went on. Later I asked the audience, how old was I? And the audience gave me several different answers because I didn't specify. There was no detail that I gave them. I was able to let the audience put me in the context that they would have been when they could emote at the same situation. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my idea is to give them enough information so that they can become the story.
I think that's a very good point. Yes, ma'am in the back.
I found that sometimes you don't need one-liners. What you need is to engage all 5 senses. So you have sounds and you have smells. What have you found to be the most effective for you? Using the 5 senses or using one-liners?
Both. And that may sound cheap. last year at this time, I did details, and there was a lot of both. There were one-liners, but there were also descriptions on the run-up to the one-liners. So you were there with me in the mall and feeling my stupidity. Well, maybe not my stupidity. I have a special brand of stupidity that not everyone can have. I guess that answers your question.
Let's think about the skydiving story. What did I use?
The color.
Blue sky, green fields.
field.
I had the wind rushing, so there was sensory. There was abject terror. That's always good.
Yeah.
There was also silence when you had jerked up, and then there was tranquility, peace, which is the polar opposite of the terror that you felt.
And then the things that got you to laugh could be considered one-liners, but really they were just my observations about what was happening to me at the time. Like, great, now I can see what we're going to hit when I die. I happen to have an overactive smart aleck gene, which you may not all be cursed or blessed with. But you find your own style because that's what the audience is going to relate to, is you as the storyteller. So whatever your style is, if your style is to bring us in with a lot of sensory detail, that's wonderful.
Maintain your appropriate proportions, because too much of a good thing spoils the whole story. Like if you have too much cinnamon in a cookie.
There's no such thing as too much cinnamon in a cookie.
Okay.
I've never had too much fun. Have you had too much fun?
I have 5 kids.
Gotcha, Meg.
He has been waiting all morning to get a line in like that.
I wanted to use that one all morning. Line them up.
What else?
Knock them down.
What other questions? Yes, sir.
Another question, I just want to provide a 6-word story.
Oh, excellent.
Humans are storytellers living our stories.
I like that. That would fit nicely on a bumper sticker, too.
That allows us to segue right into what we just did. Any further questions? Vilma.
How do you make a long story short?
Too late.
Cut.
Edit, cut, ruthlessly. We do more in 7 minutes in Toastmasters than lots of speakers do in 20.
Or 45.
Or an hour. Because everything is at a premium. Every word is gold. You don't use fillers when we're trying to convey a powerful story or a powerful point in a very, very brief time. You have to be ruthless. I remember writing stories that were 1,500 words for a Toastmasters speech and then having to edit stuffing out of it and thinking, oh my God, that's the most important word in human existence. Okay. And doing that until we cut down 600 words. And then I've got a 750, 800 word story, and that may be just what I need to do in order to compete. You have to be ruthless with your editing. Is this really, really necessary? Sometimes I have the makings of 2 speeches in one, and then you have to separate them and say, this is not germane to this story, and this is, got to hang this, I'll put this one aside for another one. I still love you, but I can't use you right now.
And on that germane note, I think we should close up. And I want to say thank you. And I have it on good authority from my husband that Connie, because you're doing an excellent job of thanking everyone.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.